Have you ever wondered how one ordinary day can change everything in a single moment? Imagine waking up with simple hopes and plans, only for events to unfold that leave you with a deep, aching sadness. This is the story of two brave police officers from Westerville, Ohio, Officer Eric Joering and Officer Anthony Tony Morelli. They dedicated their lives to helping others and protecting those in need. And one day, while answering a call for help, they lost their lives doing exactly that. On February 10, 2018, in Westerville, a call came in about a difficult situation at a home. A woman named Candace was frightened because her husband, Quinton Smith, had become violent. For many days before, Candace had lived with constant fear and worry because Quinton had a long history of bad behavior. Even though he was not allowed to have a gun, he managed to get one. That day, after spending time away and returning home filled with anger and hurt, Quinton's rage grew so much that nothing could stop it. Officer Eric Joering was 39 years old and had worked as a police officer for 16 years. He was a kind man who grew up in Westerville, attended Westerville South High School, and later studied in the police program at Columbus State Community College. Throughout his career, Eric had worked in many important roles. He was a patrol officer. He worked as a detective, and he even teamed up with his loyal K-9 partner named Sam. Off the clock, Eric was a loving husband and a caring father to his 3 daughters. His warm smile and gentle ways made him someone many trusted and admired. Officer Tony Morelli, known by many as simply Tony, was 54 years old and had spent 30 years serving as a police officer. Although Tony was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, he grew up in Ohio, where he learned the value of hard work and caring for others. He went to Washington High School and later continued his studies at Kent State University and at the Ohio State Highway Patrol Officers Academy. Before joining the Westerville Police Department, Tony had even served with the Fairlawn Police Department for a year. Known for his steady presence and kind heart, Tony was a devoted husband and a proud father to a daughter and a son. Even after his passing, his family continues to honor his memory, a memory filled with love and strength. On that February day, Candace was at home with her young daughter when things turned frightening. Quinton Smith, her husband, had been troubled for a long time. He had been in trouble for burglaries, domestic violence, and assault. His past should have kept him from owning a gun, yet he found a way to have one. After a visit to a nearby store, where his anger and jealousy grew because he believed his wife was involved with another man, Quinton returned home. His emotions were overwhelming, and he felt hurt and betrayed. Before help could arrive, Quinton attacked Candace. He hit her hard in the face and choked her until she lost consciousness. When she came to, she was in pain and terribly scared. In that desperate moment, Candace tried to call 911. Her voice shook as she tried to explain what was happening, but fear made her hang up quickly, worried that Quinton might hear her. Although the call ended abruptly, the alarm was raised, and help was on its way. About 8 minutes later, Officers Joering, Morelli, and another officer named Timothy Ray arrived at the home. They quickly took in the scene. One of the officers reported over the radio that things seemed all quiet at first. They knocked on the door and identified themselves as police. Soon, a visibly shaken Candace stepped outside. With tears in her eyes and her voice trembling, she said, "He just got done beating me up and he has a gun." Her words were filled with fear, and she hoped that with the police there, things might finally get better. Now, before we continue with the rest of this story, I want to ask you to help us share these important stories. If you care about hearing real accounts of sacrifice and service, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means a great deal. It lets us keep telling these stories in a way that touches hearts and brings awareness to the hard work of our protectors. Thank you for your kindness and for joining us on this journey. inside the home, things grew even more dangerous. Quinton Smith had hidden his guns in the cushions of the living room couch. When he saw the police at the door, he shouted at his wife, "You called the cops on me?" In that heated moment, his anger exploded. Despite the officers' desperate shouts of, "Don't do it, don't do it," Quinton reached for the guns and began firing. In a few heart-stopping seconds, the sound of gunfire shattered the quiet. A bullet struck Officer Eric Joering at very close range. It hit his left arm, then his right wrist, and finally, a fatal shot hit him in the head. The force of that bullet was so great that it shattered his skull, and Eric was gone in an instant. His loss left everyone who knew him feeling an indescribable pain. Officer Tony Morelli, who had rushed to help his fellow officer and the people inside the home, was not spared either. A bullet hit him on the left side of his chest. Even though Tony was wearing a bulletproof vest, the bullet found a small opening and caused severe injury. Tony fought with all his strength and was rushed to the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center in Columbus. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, Tony's injuries were too much, and he passed away later. As chaos reigned inside the house, Officer Timothy Ray and other officers quickly returned fire. They managed to shoot Quinton Smith 5 times, eventually ending his rampage. When the gunfire finally stopped, Candace, who had been hiding in the bushes outside, made another desperate 911 call. In her trembling voice, she pleaded, "My husband shot the police officers. Please hurry up. My daughter is in there." Her words, raw with fear and sorrow, echoed the deep pain of that moment. Inside the house, after the shots had stopped, Candace gathered her courage and stepped back inside to look for her daughter. What she found broke her heart even more. Officer Eric Joering lay motionless in the doorway, and Officer Tony Morelli was on the floor, struggling to breathe and speak. More gunshots were fired in the confusion, and unable to face the horror, Candace ran back outside to hide once again, terrified for her daughter's safety. The actions of Officers Joering and Morelli that day showed their true dedication. They had answered a call for help without hesitation, risking everything so that others might be safe. Their selfless actions remind us that sometimes people give the most precious gift, their own lives, in order to protect those they love. Their sacrifice that day has left a lasting mark on everyone who remembers them. After the shooting, additional officers arrived to secure the area and help those who were hurt. They quickly confirmed the painful truth. 2 dedicated officers had lost their lives while on duty. Quinton Smith, though badly injured from being shot multiple times, survived the attack and was taken to the hospital. In the hours and days that followed, the shock of losing such caring souls spread far and wide. Friends, neighbors, and families were filled with grief and disbelief. As the investigation went on, details about Quinton Smith's troubled past emerged. Smith, who was 30 years old, had a long history of criminal behavior. He had been involved in burglaries, domestic violence, and assaults over the years. Even though his past should have prevented him from having a gun, he found a way to get one by paying someone to purchase it for him. His record showed that anger and violence were not new to him, and that his actions on that day were a part of a long pattern of behavior. Candace, his wife, had reached out for help many times before. She had called 911 and even visited the police station to ask for protection orders because of the abuse she endured at his hands. In fact, just a few days before the shooting, she had spoken with officers about how violent Quinton could be. Yet, despite her warnings, nothing had stopped the cycle of anger and hurt that led to that fateful afternoon. After the shooting, on February 11, 2018, Quinton Smith was charged with the murders of officers Eric Joering and Tony Morelli. He was held in Franklin County Jail without the option of bail, as the pain and anger of those who had lost their protectors grew deeper with every passing day. In October 2019, Quinton Smith's trial began. The courtroom was filled with heavy hearts as jurors, witnesses, and family members gathered to understand what happened on that cold day. Officers who had been at the scene, including Officer Timothy Ray, described in clear and simple terms the horrifying moments when they saw a good man fall and another brave officer struggle for life. Their words painted a picture of a day filled with fear, anger, and deep sadness. During the trial, the defense argued that Quinton Smith did not plan to kill the officers and that his actions were the result of panic and confusion. They even brought in experts to talk about his low IQ and the mental challenges he had faced over the years. However, the prosecutors argued that Smith knew exactly what he was doing. They pointed out that he had hidden his guns, confronted his wife in front of the police, and deliberately fired his weapon at the officers who had come to help. The evidence, from the autopsy reports to the testimonies of those who witnessed the event, made it clear that his actions were intentional. After long hours of careful discussion, on November 1, 2019, the jury found Quinton Smith guilty on multiple counts. He was convicted of 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, and 1 count of domestic violence, along with extra charges that made him eligible for the death penalty. During the sentencing phase of the trial, something important happened for the first time in Ohio. The families of the victims were allowed to speak directly to the jury. The widows of officers Joering and Morelli, along with Tony Morelli's daughter, shared their painful stories, telling of the deep loss and heartache they suffered. Their words brought a very human face to the cost of such violence. During the sentencing phase, the defense again tried to argue that Quinton Smith's troubled mind was responsible for what happened. They brought in a psychosocial investigator and a psychologist to explain that his low IQ and the harsh words he had endured might have influenced his actions. But the jury was not convinced. After nearly 4 hours of careful discussion, they recommended that Quinton Smith be sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. On November 21, 2019, Judge Richard Fry officially handed down the sentence. 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus an additional sentence of 26.5 years. In his final remarks, the judge reminded Smith that even though his life had been spared by the jury's decision, he still owed it to those he had hurt to show genuine remorse, a message that could not undo the pain of the loss. Quinton Smith was then transferred to the Warren Correctional Institution on December 5, 2019, where he now serves his long sentence. For everyone who had known and loved officers Joering and Morelli, the verdict brought a small measure of justice, even though nothing could ever replace the loss of these kind souls or fill the emptiness felt by their families and friends. In the days and weeks after that day, Westerville found many ways to remember and honor the fallen officers. The police department, along with local groups, set up funds to help cover medical bills, funeral costs, and to support the children of the officers. A portion of Interstate 270 was named the Officers Anthony Morelli and Eric Joering Memorial Highway, so that every time someone drove by, they would be reminded of the bravery and sacrifice of these 2 men. People gathered at local schools, parks, and community centers to hold vigils and memorial ceremonies. They shared memories, shed tears, and celebrated the lives of 2 heroes who had given everything to keep others safe. Even national leaders spoke about the loss. President Donald Trump posted a message online describing the events as a very sad loss for the nation, and Governor John Kasich praised the courage of the officers, ordering that flags on public buildings be flown at half-staff in their honor. Such messages, while they could not heal the deep pain, helped remind everyone that the sacrifice of these officers would not be forgotten. The story of that February day is a strong reminder of the risks that our protectors take every day. The sacrifice of officers Eric Joering and Tony Morelli shows us the true meaning of courage and the depth of care that police officers have for the people they serve. Their loss teaches us that life is delicate and that every moment matters. It also reminds us to be kind to one another, Sometimes a simple kind word or a helping hand can make all the difference in someone's life. As you listen to this story, think about the power of caring for others. Look around you. Ask yourself if someone you know might need a friend or a kind word. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can be a light in a very dark place. The memory of Officers Joering and Morelli calls on us to reach out, to help, and to work together so that every person feels safe and cared for. Before we move on to the later parts of this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and helps ensure that these important stories reach more people. With your help, we can continue to honor the sacrifices of our heroes and remind everyone how precious life truly is. Looking back on that cold February day, we see a series of moments that changed many lives forever. Officers Joering and Morelli stepped forward to answer a call for help, and they gave everything they had to protect others. Their bravery, even in the face of extreme danger, stands as a shining example of what it means to serve with love and dedication. After the shooting, more officers arrived and began to help those who were hurt. They worked hard to secure the area and to offer comfort to those who needed it. In the midst of all the chaos, the memory of those two officers began to take root in the hearts of everyone who heard about what had happened. Their names became symbols of sacrifice, reminding us that there are people among us who are willing to put their own lives on the line so that we can be safe. In the days and weeks that followed, people talked about what could be done to help prevent such events in the future. Many started to ask hard questions. How can we stop anger from turning into violence? What more can be done to help those who feel trapped in dangerous situations? Although there were no easy answers, one thing was clear. The loss of Officers Joering and Morelli urged everyone to take a closer look at how we care for one another. Their sacrifice is a reminder that every life matters, and that even a small act of kindness can sometimes be the difference between hope and despair. Over time, the memories of these two officers have continued to inspire changes in many ways. Local groups have worked to create better support systems for people who are experiencing domestic violence, and there have been efforts to make sure that when someone calls for help, they receive it quickly and effectively. Schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods have all started conversations about how to recognize when someone is in need and how to offer help without delay. For many in Westerville, every day is a reminder of that fateful February day. Every time someone drives along the Officers Anthony Morelli and Eric Joering Memorial Highway, they remember the courage of two men who gave everything to protect others. Every memorial ceremony, every story shared about these officers keeps their memory alive. Their legacy lives on in the hearts of those who knew them and in the efforts made to ensure that such a loss never happens again. Even though nothing can bring back the two officers, their sacrifice has taught us many valuable lessons. We learn that true courage comes from caring deeply for others, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to stand up and help when someone is in need. Their lives remind us that every moment is precious, and that we should never take for granted the people who protect and support us. As you think about the story of Officers Eric Joering and Tony Morelli, remember that each of us can make a difference. Whether it's reaching out to a neighbor, offering a kind word to a friend, or simply being aware of the signs that someone might be hurting, every little action matters. Their story calls on us all to be more compassionate, to work together, and to ensure that our world is a little kinder and a little safer for everyone. In closing, let the memory of these two heroes inspire you to live with purpose and care. Their sacrifice is a lasting reminder that while life can be incredibly fragile, the bonds we share can be strong enough to overcome even the hardest challenges. Every act of kindness, every moment of care, and every effort to help those in need keeps the spirit of these officers alive. Thank you for listening to this story. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can continue to share stories that matter. Your support helps us spread the message of hope, kindness, and the importance of protecting one another. Together, let's honor the legacy of Officers Eric Joering and Tony Morelli by being the light in someone's dark moment and by building a future where every life is valued. May the bravery and sacrifice of these officers guide us always, and may we carry their memory in our hearts as a constant reminder to cherish every moment and care deeply for those around us. Their legacy is not just a story of loss. It is a call to action for all of us to live our lives with compassion, courage, and unwavering commitment to making the world a better place. Thank you again for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and together, let's keep their memory shining bright for generations to come.